Good morning, Temple friends. Happy new moon in Libra. I was pulling some cards for myself this morning, but it felt more like a collective reading. So I've decided to do an impromptu voice note and share them with you because Spirit had some very clear guidance for this lunar cycle, and I think it's very much needed. So I'm using a 3-card spread that I usually use during new lunar cycles. I haven't used it in a while, but it popped in my head this morning when I was showering, so I decided to do this one. For this 3-card spread, it's developmental theme, which I always pull a major arcana for. And then the next position is the best mental attitude to cultivate for this lunar cycle. And I will intentionally pull a court card. And then the third position is some actionable guidance, and I will, let whatever minor arcana come up. Now, normally I will only use a tarot deck for this, but sometimes I will use Oracle and, forget the intentional placements. But for this particular spread, I felt called to use both. And that's something that I actually had not done before. So I think that's why this felt more like a collective reading based on what Spirit came through with. So let's get started with what the cards are saying for this lunar cycle, this new moon in Libra. It's about balance, it's about harmony, relationships, and all that. So the developmental theme for this new lunar cycle is the Hermit paired with Y in reverse. I found this interesting because we're in a 9-year universally. It's a 9-year for everybody, 2025. And the 9 is about completion, wisdom, and wrapping up cycles. I don't know about you, but the hermit has not been hermiting in 2025. It is wild out here in these streets. So I find it really interesting that here comes the hermit asking us to go inward. It's like we've been trying to go inward all year and look around and, just take a look at what's happening in the world. So that's why I find it interesting. Spirit definitely has a sense of humor. But the Y card in reverse, it's telling me that this really isn't about isolation or hiding, which is, what the hermit does. They go within, but also they tend to isolate themselves in order to go within. You can't really hear yourself if you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people yapping in your ear. You can't hear your own thoughts. So this Y in reverse, I don't feel that it's talking about isolation or hiding. It's talking about introspection with purpose. It's asking, do you actually understand why you're making the choices that you're making? Or are you simply moving because movement feels productive? The hermit knows that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to pause, it's to stop, to take a step back and actually get clear on your actual motivations before you make the next move, before you take any more action. The hermit knows that that's part of what introspection is all about. So the best mental attitude to cultivate is the Page of Swords and Orphaned. Now, I love the Page of Swords. It comes up for me often. And as soon as the card came out, I heard intellectual curiosity. So this particular Page of Swords, because it's the air element, I'm always talking about air. So this is about, your mental processes, thinking, your ideas and all that. So the Page of Swords is that energy of questioning everything, learning voraciously, being genuinely curious about how things work, not cynical, but actually curious, and not defensive, but investigative. They really want to learn. And Orphaned is a card about searching for belonging, for your people, for your tribe, for the community that actually gets you. So the attitude I feel coming through from Spirit in this, new lunar moon, which is also about relationships, is to stay curious about where you actually belong. Question the spaces you've been occupying out of habit, and be willing to admit when something doesn't fit anymore, even if it used to. That can be hard, but that's part of the introspective process. So the actionable guidance is the Four of Pentacles and community. Again, Spirit has a sense of humor because we were just talking about orphan and finding your tribe. So the Four of Pentacles, depending on the deck, tends to get a bad rap as the hoarding card. Now, in the Light Seers Tarot, I don't see that. I think of it more as conservation. And I'm thinking of it as, well, I'm feeling it rather as conserving your resources strategically, if that makes sense. You know, your time, your energy, your money, your creative attention. Resources are not just limited to money. So just because it's the Four of Pentacles doesn't mean that it's always about money. Resources can be anything. So again, it's your time, your energy, your money, your creative attention. So this lunar cycle is asking you to be discerning about where your resources go. Not necessarily stingy, but strategic. You don't have to be closed off, but you can have boundaries. One of those boundaries is, if you watch any of Don Lemon's, lives and stuff, he's always talking about turn the TV off. Your creative attention, that is a resource. You can have boundaries. And then this is where the community card comes in. Community has been coming up a lot in my mind and in some of the spaces that I'm in, and I'm hearing a lot of people talk about it. So again, Spirit has a sense of humor. He or she, I don't really see it as a male or female type energy, masculine or feminine, but they like to bring things full circle. So when you're in alignment with your community, you don't have to hoard your resources, your time, your energy, your money, your creative opportunity. You don't have to hoard that because you're not alone. You can be genuous. Well, not genuous. Well, maybe you can be genuine. The words come out as they're supposed to come out, but you can also be generous with the right containers because there's reciprocity there. So again, this goes back to the Hermit and asking why you make some of the choices that you're making. It also goes back to orphan. If there's no reciprocity there, then that means that this particular community may not be a fit for you anymore. And something you would need to think about is, why is there no reciprocity? Is it because you're not being a good community member, or is you're genuinely open and sharing and giving your all, and then you're not getting anything in return? So you can share freely with people who actually value what you offer. All of the cards are connected. So the Four of Pentacles in this case is not about gripping tightly. It's about knowing what's worth protecting. Again, your time, your energy, your money, your creative attention, and what's worth investing in. Same thing, your time, your energy, your money, and your creative attention. So overall, I feel rather, because I'm out of my thinking mind, I'm totally in the body right now. This lunar cycle is asking you to go inward with intention, not to hide away, not to isolate yourself, but really get clear on your why and understanding what's actually driving your choices right now. And to stay intellectually curious about belonging. Question where you've been trying to fit in. Are you like a square peg trying to fit yourself in a round hole? Why are you trying to do that? Investigating what aligned community actually looks like for you. It may not be what everybody's talking about online. It may be very unique to you, and you should honor that. And then also conserve your resources for what matters most to you. Be strategic about your time, your energy, and your attention. Invest them in community that, reciprocates and not spaces that drain you. Invest them in people and things that reciprocate and don't drain you. So for me personally, because I am part of the collective, these cards are confirmation of some shifts that I've already started making. I didn't know these cards were going to come out when I pulled them, but it's just confirmation of the changes that I've decided that I want to make. There are some spaces that I'm going to be stepping back from, some resources that I'm going to redirect. and some community that I'm actually building rather than passively hoping to find. So I'm not going to say much more than that right now because some things need to be developed in private before they're ready to go public. The hermit knows that not everything is for immediate sharing. But I will say this though, if these cards resonated with you, pay attention to where you're being called inward this cycle. Where are you being asked to question your why? Where are you feeling the pull towards different community? Trust that. Follow that. Conserve your energy for what's actually aligned. And that's basically the message. So, happy new moon, temple dwellers, temple scholars, all those who are visiting the temple. Happy new moon. May this cycle bring you clarity, curiosity, and community that actually feels like home. So I'll be back soon with more from the temple. Until then, always trust your compass. It's something that I'm learning to do more and more each day.